Welcome to this week's exciting edition of your favorite program, Yilungelo, Lakho, it's your right. Sizakoni kubukhoma la kumamba phambili SABC 1 Mzansi for sure. Uhlelo nomangcolosi uAlicia Unhlanhla wakajali uyazi ke mbukeli ngithi nje kumnandi futhi ukuthi siphinde sibe nani sikwazi ukuthi sinicebise phela ngezinto eziningi ekumele nivule amehlo nizigade against zona. Mbukela udaba lethu namuhla lubhekene phela nokwanda kwezigebengu ezithembisa amathenda mbumbulu ahambe nezimali zabathengi abebecabanga ukuthi phela bazitholele impilo engcono ngazo. Ngaphambi kokuthi singene kakhulu odabeni lethu ake siqale kahle uhlelo lethu. Tender scams targeting unsuspecting consumers are currently on the rise, and some consumers bedazzled by the prospects of instant riches, big houses, big cars, often fall victim to these fraudulent procurement advertisements. Omunye owathi mbukeli ufake isicelo sethenda lakahulumeni kanti ulahla imali eshisiwe ngumthengi wala eGoli uNaomi Tiyane. Ke siza ukuthi udaba lakhe lithini.
I was also a victim of a scam. I received a spoofing email from a lady named Amanda Ngesi. She was pretending to work for the Department of Labor and Employment. And in the email, they were inviting everyone to actually participate in a tender bid where they were requested to supply and deliver CCTV system. And the name of the products are so unique that when you search for them on Google, only one company website is actually going to match that. And I think obviously that's a strategy for them to direct the traffic to that fake website. So obviously I requested for a quotation and put my company markup and submitted the requested the documents with my information. And the next day I received a call from Amanda telling me that I got the tender and I need to deliver by Friday. So obviously it was quite, there wasn't enough time, and obviously I didn't have the amount of money, of money lying in my bank account. So I had to go to the bank and request for a loan. And luckily I got the loan, and the supplier, which is based in Cape Town, insisted on an immediate payment. But fortunately for ABSA, they only, after 3 p.m. you can no longer make an immediate payment, and I think that's what actually saved me. So I made a normal payment, and they said, okay, they will accept it. I just need to share the proof of payment, which I did. So when I got to my place, I started thinking about this whole thing, and actually the consultant who was helping me at the bank asked me, to say, Naomi, is this not a scam? And I said, no, it's not a scam, but after the whole payment was made, I started thinking about his words, and it got me thinking, what if it is actually a scam? So I decided to go back to the lady's email address and looked at it thoroughly, and it actually looked a bit offish. So I decided to take the exact email address and search for it on Google. And immediately when I did that, all the scam reports that were under that name or email address actually appeared. And in that moment I realized that I actually got scammed. Obviously I was very much stressed. The first thing I did was to call the ABSA fraud as well as the NetBank fraud line, because the scammers actually use a NetBank account. So I made the payment from ABSA to NetBank. And so to cut a long story short, the investigation took roughly 3 months, and I eventually got my money back. So thinking about this whole thing, I think the mistakes that I did, I think I was too excited and didn't really think thoroughly about this. I was participating in an industry that I had no prior experience or anyone mentoring or guiding me within it, because I actually did a TikTok video and it got so much views, and I got so many comments on the video, as well as people sending me DMs to tell me that they actually got scammed the same way, and they were scammed. Someone was scammed 400,000 rand, 500,000 rands. Someone was actually scammed like 1 million rands. So these people have been around for quite some time. But I think the thing that can actually save us is more awareness around cybersecurity. People need to take their time before they actually make a payment.
Sibonge kakhulu ngodaba la Naomi Uwala at Johannesburg. And now to further discuss this growing fraudulent tender advertisements, let's extend a very warm welcome to Lerato Sebata, who is a procurement expert. Samgele no Chad Thomas okhulumela IRS Forensic Investigation. Ladies and gentlemen, great having you with us this afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much for having us.
Chad, welcome back. Lerato, let's start with you. I need to get in-depth knowledge of whether or not you are familiar with the story of Naomi's very unfortunate circumstance, and what do you think could have happened besides what she obviously explained to us?
Yeah, it is so sad. I mean, I really empathize with her, and I'm glad she managed to get her money back. I did also see the video trending on TikTok, and that also prompted me to do even further videos, educational, regarding how people can identify fake tenders. You know, it's so unfortunate because a lot of people that are doing these scams, they prey on lack of knowledge, knowing people are desperate to create extra income, and at the same time they don't understand how procurement processes work. So when you just receive an email that says, hey, request for quotation, you just get excited. Yes.
Chad, you also familiar with the story?
I am, and I must give a shout out to Naomi for, number one, not being a victim, being brave enough to warn other people.
Absolutely.
And for being successful in recovering her funds.
So she was able to recover her funds. Chad, you want to tell us?
After 3 months, the banks were able to reverse the transactions after a thorough investigation. So she was placed in good stead. But what happened to her is happening to hundreds, if not thousands of people on a weekly basis in South Africa. And the mode, as she described so articulately, is exactly what's happening. People are getting emails and it's asking for a specific product with a specific code.
Yes.
And when you input that specific product and code on Google, it only directs you to one website.
True.
And what you don't know is the person that's emailed you and the person on the other side of the website where you're going to procure the product is one and the same syndicate. And they will tell you that there's been a lot of interest in this product. It's the last of its kind in South Africa, and they're going to give it to you for a certain price. You already know what you can sell it to government for. It looks as if you can double, treble, maybe even quadruple your money.
Yep.
But because of the urgency created now by the owners of this website who purportedly have this product, you have to pay immediately. You still think to yourself, well, I'm going to make back a lot of money. If you don't have the funds, you borrow it, friends, family, maybe the banks, and therein lies the trap. The minute those funds are paid across, that website disappears, and there's no more communication between yourself and the fraudster.
So, Lerato, talk to us about how much exactly did Naomi lose in this case?
As far as I understand, she lost about 200,000.
Wow.
Well, she almost lost 200,000 because she managed to recover it at the end of the day. Yeah, and I've also had friends that told me they've lost over R1 million because of the same problem.
But then, is it only businesses that are registered on the Treasury's Central Supply Database, or CSD, that are actually targets?
Well, most of them are targeted through Central Supply Database, but also some people just go into CIPC search suppliers. They manage to hack, manage to look into things, and then find your company registered. Then they're able to email you and send you quotations.
But Chad, how are they getting hold of such sensitive and private information? Let's start with the CSD. I was just telling you guys off air that I had to remove myself because of the volume and nature of the emails, like phishing emails that I was getting. Those scams that are saying you need to come and supply army boots, and they will give you everything looks so legitimate. If you are not familiar with the processes, you could literally find yourself like Naomi.
So CIPC are trying their best to limit the amount of exposure that their client base has with non-registered users or perhaps bad actors within that space. But we saw that the majority of these crimes that were committed in the early days of these tender scams were people that were registered on the National Treasury Supplier Database. And it means that people have access to this database. But it's not just that government department that's vulnerable. We saw with what we call business email compromise, where people intercept invoicing that you're expecting, pretending to be that company. They got your details, and normally it's a property transaction. They got your details from the deeds office or the master's office. So somewhere along the line, there's complicity with somebody who has access to these databases.
Can I also
worrying fact indeed. I have to take a very quick ad break. After the break, I'll be opening your lines now. If you've fallen victim to similar scams, ungasfonela la e studio usichazele mhlambe sizokhona ukuthi sizame ukukusiza. Stay tuned. Okay, 011-714-0671, alternatively 011-714-0672. Ungasithumela email ku consumer@sabc.co.za. Alternatively, call us on WhatsApp on 0608449857. You can also ushiyele umyalezo lapho noma ushiyele ivideo usithinte futhi ke on our social media platforms. Namhlanje mbukeli, I do have with me in studio Usis Lerato Sebata, who's a procurement expert, alongside Mr. Chad Thomas, who is from IRS Forensic Investigators. Siyanixwayisa ke mbukeli ngala ma scams lawa ekuthiwa abantu bantargeta lapha. Usually nina enazi ukuthi nifuna ukubheka izinto kwi-CSD lapha yahlampu registiwe, uzothola nje i-email ethi sifuna abantu abazosupply ama-army boots kanjani sicela enze quotation, but it's always got a catch. Faka imali kuqala ukuze sikise ebantwini aba-right. Lerato, you wanted to say something ngaphambi
yebo, bengifuna ukusho ukuthi sometimes lama scammers bayakwazi ukuthi bahambe ku CSD and then search ama-suppliers that are providing particular services.
Yes, because kuyabhala ukuthi umuntu wenzani la.
Yebo.
Okay.
Then mabazi ukuthi okay, business lakho mhlawumbe wenza i-branded clothing promotional items. Bayafika lapha bavela bafake branded promotional item suppliers. Then kuvela ama-details lapho. That's how they're able to get ama-emails wakho, and tomorrow they'll be duplicating, you know, these tender documents from the government and then sending you getting an email.
But then, Chad, how can you tell if it's a legitimate request for or offer for a tender? Because it is so sophisticated, like I said earlier. I mean, they even have the proper logos of these companies that they are purportedly representing.
So don't get overly excited when you get these emails. Start doing simple checks. Look at the email address that it came from. Identify whether the domain name is actually the domain name of that particular government department. When you get told to look for a specific product and you find that it's only available on one site, that should be a warning sign. You've got international websites like Alibaba that are involved in procurement and have a list of almost every product produced around the world. If it doesn't come up on Alibaba on one of these other inventory lists, there's a problem. Why is it just on this local website? And why is that company not tendering? Why do I have to go via?
Yes.
Also, the department that's asking you for that particular tender would normally advertise their tenders online themselves. Go onto the actual website of that department, not the website you directed to by the company or the individual that's approaching you. And as I said, you need to be very cautious when looking at the domain, because normally if government is .org.za or .gov.za, if it's a .com or .co.za or .biz,
you need to be
suspicious. The warning bell should be going off.
Lerato, I mean, let's talk about is there effective means or robust education, information about such scams and how to avoid them and spot them that government is currently, supplying to its central database?
It's not enough, to be honest. Khona manje mawungabheka ama-websites from the government, they just provide a tender notice in terms of fraud. What does fraud look like? And each government entity will have their own tender notice, eshoguti, beware of this. This is not coming from us. I'm a purchase order way to a PRO is not this and
not
that.
Everybody has access
but not everyone has no access. So I think it's important the government must do enough education regarding procurement processes. Government does not solicit bids, meaning they won't come to you, but Alicia, Stella, quote 1, 2, 3. That's why I go to the central supply database to start there. So abantu mele bayazi that type of information.
Awusixoxele ngale process Lerato ukuthi kahle just for those ukuthi siba educate ukuthi kahle how does then it get to, let's say you're on the CSD, ilokhuzana procurement process yabo ihamba kanjani?
So understand the purpose of CSD. Central supply database, remember government's mandate from National Treasury is that all procurement activities must be fair.
True.
They must be competitive. So uguti when as Alicia Sebata, SABC,
documented.
how do you find, how do you find service providers? Ne? Then you need to provide a portal that is easily accessible, public knowledge, so everyone can go in there and look for you
It's
as a supplier.
transparency as well.
Transparency. So one, you need to be registered in a central supplier database. And then public entities, they are supposed to be advertising publicly to make the information available on their websites, including CSD. Then you need to go and search as a supplier. I'm looking for an opportunity related to supply and deliver of stationery of our mail and then automatically get an email. Yes. Now, maguza kunda zama private sector, it's a bit different, which is not public sector. Labo ke, you need to be registered on their database first before they can even know Guti Felicia Ukona exist. Then they'll send you the information for quotation. So if you have not registered with CSD, if you are not part of any supply database whatsoever, and then utoli email it is supply from Lapo Guti nje go wrong. This is not legit,
Chad, you told me that Naomi was actually able to, after rigorous fighting with the banks, actually was able to recoup her money. Was she able to also get the perpetrators apprehended and dealt with severely? What happened to that side of the investigation?
It's doubtful. I don't know what happened to the suspects afterwards, and I don't want to speculate on that
Were they
particular
ever caught
case.
even?
You know what, it's so very difficult because she identified that she paid for an ABSA account to a net bank account. And when you're paying into
And
an
that was
account,
her saving grace, I
yes,
suppose, Chad. Yes,
correct.
She didn't do a private, personal payment type of transaction.
And this is where the fraudsters are so clever. If you're suddenly getting asked to do a cash send or you're getting asked to drop off monies, it becomes a bit suspicious. If you're asked to transfer to an account and that account looks legitimate, you take it at what it's at the information it's given to you. But we suffer in this country with a problem of mule accounts.
Yes.
This is where people have sold their identities, sold their bank accounts.
Thank you.
They are poor, they are impoverished, and the spotters of these syndicates are looking out for them. They find unemployed youth in places of entertainment, shebeens, taverns. They say to them, you want to make 500 Rand, you want to make 1,000 Rand, you want to make 2,000 Rand. Get your friends together, those that have IDs, those that can get the local ward councillor.
Just like we saw with fake marriages.
Yep.
Women were selling their IDs for 20 Rand.
And it's heartbreaking because these people are now part of the money laundering ecosystem. They've provided the means in which these funds get laundered. So you'll have the police
really.
or the investigators find a name and an address associated with that account on the FIC or the KYC docs. They are so excited they've got a suspect. They kick down the door. It's a youth that sold.
An old grandma there that is sitting there. Her ID was stolen probably many moons ago. So do you think police have the necessary resources, though, Chad, to actually deal with these types of cases? I mean, would you even underline this or underpin this under fraud or what? What type of investigation or case would you be dealing with when you're saying to the police, I've been scammed of this?
So it's fraud in the first instance because facts have been misrepresented. It's forgery and uttering because they presented fake documents. And then because the money went through a bank account, it's money laundering. These are serious offences. But when one looks at the state of our law enforcement at the present moment, our state has to deal with so many investigations into violent contact crimes, crimes involving GBV, crimes involving children. We don't have enough investigators to investigate the sheer volume of financial crime such as this.
Well, they'll tell you they don't even have the resources besides the actual bodies who call themselves the investigators, Chad. So then, Lerato, can you share maybe, do you think it's actually certain sectors and industries? And Chad, I also want you to also just jump in at the back of Lerato's answer. Do you think it's certain industries or sectors that tend to be more susceptible to being targeted?
Yeah. These people, they know that there are certain commodities that are saturated, and there's a lot of suppliers.
Okay.
Stationery, cleaning,
Security.
security,
We've seen a lot of those
supply of
boots.
blankets. It seems very, we call it in procurement indirect spend, and at the same time it is a commodity that is the barriers of entry is low. So akudingeka ube nama licenses, approvals from maybe particular sectors to be SABC approved. So kuba lula just to supply pen and paper or
you
to
can
supply
even
printers.
when in
So those type of commodities are the ones that are mostly affected and targeted.
Okay.
Because they know ukuthi abantu abaningi bakhona lapho, and there's so many opportunities anyway on a day-to-day that is required.
And in your experience, Chad? Industries, sectors that are targeted?
Department of Defense sends out a lot of these fake tenders. It's obviously not Department of Defense.
I was about to say.
They're looking for uniforms. They're
Army
looking
boots.
for army boots. Army boots seem to be a
Protective
lot.
gear. Remember the PPE issue when that came through. So mining supplies as well.
And then most definitely Department of Correctional Services seem to be sending out a lot. And of course it's not them, it's these fakes. So it's anything that would be needed. And the fraudsters are clever. They watch what's happening. They know when a department is going to be recruiting, and that if you were to look at the news, oh, the military have a new intake of young soldiers, they're going to be needing this type of equipment. So it kind of makes sense. But from the private sector perspective, it's slightly different. When a fraudster targets a private company as another private company, not a government department, this is where we see the unique stuff coming in. Like a nuts and bolts company, they'll approach that company asking for the specific nut and bolt that that company's never ever heard of. And therein lies, of course, the fraud, because when they start searching for this product, they redirect it to the fraudster's website.
I see. Mbukele, I hope you're really taking notes lapho, especially when uthanda ukuthi uzama ukuthi usupplement income yakho ngamathuba amanye avelayo emasayidini ngokuthi ubheke nalapha emathendeni ukuthi mhlambe ungaba nenhlanhla. We're going to take another quick ad break. Remember, my lines are wide open. We're back shortly after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Sisakhuluma ngama-scams atargeta labo bantu mhlawumbe bakwi-central business supplier or supplier database ka-government or i-CSD or abanye-ke abama-private entities. Uthola ukuthi kuzothiwa sicela i-quotation, sicela ama-boots ukuthi nokuthi, but the catch is always kumele uqale ukhokhe imali ethize khona bezokuhlanganisa noSibongiseni. uSibongiseni uzokuyisa kuCynthia, uCynthia ke bese ekhuluma nabantu balapha, and then uyaxwayiswa bukela ukuthi that is not actually how it works. My lines are wide open. Do call us in studio 011-714-0671, alternatively 714-0672. Ngasithinta ku WhatsApp 060-844-9857 or consumer@sabc.co.za. Sikhona futhi on all our social media platforms. All right, my guest today, Lerato Sebata, who is a procurement expert, alongside Mr. Chad Thomas, who's from IRS Forensic Investigators. So, Lerato, uzwile ukuthi uChad uthini ukuthi mesichaza ukuthi obani laba abatargetwayo, ubuthi wena you wanted to add something ntokazi osichazele mhlawumbe usinika umzekelo.
No, bengisafuna ukusho ukuthi in other instances ne uzothola ukuthi lama scammers they go and check ukuthi mhlambe ku Eskom kusebenza ama-buyer maphi.
Okay.
Maybe ku Transnet uLerato sebenza lapho
Okay.
uhleza issue lama
They're very proactive.
very proactive and smart. And then if there is an existing RFP already tender ngalesikhathi leso bayakwazi bayithatha by duplicating igama lakho, everything. The only thing will change will be probably a telephone number and obviously an email address like what wrong, ne? And I've also seen an example where someone I know told me ukuthi they used to submit a tender in one of the government institutions. Lo muntu lo vele bekasebenza lapho. That person left the organization and then went on and decided naye ukuthi uzenza into zakhe esayidini because they were caught doing izinto ezingekho right. And manje ngoba bona sojwayele legama lokuthi uLerato wenza lama RFQs nama tenders, obviously you will submit under the trust ukuthi ibuya lapho kanti nayo is
and word of mouth
duplicated.
also ngalezinto. Lerato, let's not forget also, Chad, I mean, a lot of people, I suppose, they would know by virtue of working in that same space, bazokwazi ukuthi this one is responsible for this and that.
Definitely. So injalo le ndaba sis.
And Chad, then how do scammers typically present themselves? Are they often associated with any specific industries or sectors?
No. The scammers are from across society. And we're finding that, look, we went through a phase where we spoke about... They
just did proper research on their targets and
they're using the fact that people have spoken in the past about tenderpreneurs. We've seen how successful people have become as a result of tenders, and they're preying on that. Everybody wants bang for their buck. Everybody knows that government is the biggest client in South Africa. If you can have government as your client, you're set. you've got it made.
Oh,
because
yeah.
one tender, if you deliver, will become another, will become
You're
another.
going to be a tenderpreneur.
Correct. And they're preying on that. They are preying on these people who just want to make it.
Because they've seen those guys throwing money at the clubs there. All right, let's go to the callers. Sithathe uThandiwe eMpumalanga. Sithandiwe sakamukela Ntokazi ohlelweni singakusiza kanjani namhlanje?
Alright, ngiyabonga sithi ngokungamukela.
Yebo sisi.
Nginombuzo lana ngoba nami I'm one of the person engu database ye-CSD.
Yebo sisi.
So I'm receiving emails amaningi ukuthi I must supply this, and then when I go to the website ngithi ngiya-check ama-emails, it's one thing and khona but the third party bank. Bangumuntu ngithola certain information at least I'm being recognized on the CSD database ukuthi I must supply, which puts me in a position ukuthi ngibe scammed, and some of us as khona access the internet part of the government uthi uyangena ku website of government ukuthi you want to verify the email. Sometimes it will just knock you down and tell you ukuthi the website you are entering in an error code. So that's a challenge. I think what I'm requesting government to do more security in terms of the database, because as a government institution, they must make sure the safety of the information it reaches its highest point, because now we are being scammed and no one is assisting us. We don't get justice in terms of getting the culprits that are busy doing all these tender scammers. So siyacela kakhulu.
Yebo sisithandiwe. So wena sisithandiwe awukaze ulokhuza umzulu sisilerato uthi amalokhuzana if ama-email eyifikela nje kuwena kumele ube suspicious if wena ungakaze uyobheka kwi-database ukuthi yazini or kuma-department ugovernment ufuna ini. Wakwaya mhlawumbe wayobheka kuma-department a-inline nalezi zinto lezi oyisupplyayo so that uyazi ukuthi naba abantu ekumele ukuthi bona abangakuthinta.
Initially bengazi ngingaboleka imali ebank. Luckily mangithi ngixoxa na one of my friend wathi no asiverify le tender, and only to find ukuthi i-tender yase-Transnet it was not valid, it was not legit. And on the side I've made an application on the bank to say I need this amount of money, but luckily angakayifaki le mali to those people.
Yo siyabonga sisithandiwe, and thank you so much for ukuthi ucele leso sicelo ku government. Nathi we are pushing, unfortunately asina i-representative abangasiza ukuthi silokhuze nje sikunikeze impendulo ukuthi in terms of the measures abayifakayo to up that security. That is usisithandiwe eMpumalanga. Chad, she receives these supply emails. She's never gone to check, she's never gone like been a proactive supplier who goes to check, like Lerato suggested, that you actually go to this department and look at what they're actually looking for in terms of suppliers. She says she had actually gone so far as borrowing money from the bank, but luckily a friend of hers was like, listen, let's verify this email. And that's how she actually was saved from being a potential victim.
Well, thank goodness she had a friend like that gave her the advice.
And she's saying the same thing though, Chad. She says there's not enough security or education or awareness from the CSD side.
Government as a whole are not educating the public. We should be seeing infomercials on our national broadcaster relating to all kinds of frauds and all kinds of scams. And what I think we should have, if you look at the state, they have an organization called CETA with an I.
Thank
and
you.
CETA with an I is the Information Technology Agency of the state. We should have a function on the CETA website where we can enter an email address and it will verify whether it's a government email address or not. It's a simple solution to a complicated problem. But government doesn't seem to be focusing on the root causes. Everything is a band-aid approach. They come afterwards and they say, well, I'm sorry, we should have done better. Our police are incapacitated, we don't have the resources. But we shouldn't be reacting, we should be proactive.
Absolutely.
And the state is the key to
mitigating
this.
all the issues. Sis Lerato, again, I'm going to give you a chance shortly after this. Mbugale, let's take another quick ad break. We're back shortly after this. vele sisakhuluma ngama-scams lawa atargeta labantu abalapha yana kwi-Central Supplier Database ya-government or i-CSD or ama-private entities lapho uzothola ukuthi kuthiwa release imali sizokuhlanganisa nomuntu osophethe ukuthi nokuthi ozokwenza sure ukuthi le tender mfana uyayithola kanti idolo lo bazothatha imali yakho baqede bathule babaleke bangabe besakutshela ukuthi kwenzakaleni ngemali yakho. I am still joined by Chad Thomas. So Chad, I mean, maybe let's talk about, have you actually noticed any patterns or trends in how these scammers actually evolve over time? Because we were just talking about an unrelated topic, but also on scams, you and I, and we talk about how sophisticated they are and how they're actually able to keep ahead with technology.
They are. They're way ahead, and this is what people don't seem to realize.
Why don't they find legitimate jobs then, these people, Chad?
It's a worldwide phenomenon. It's easy money, and people want to live that luxurious life that they see other
capitalizing on our naivety.
It's very sad. Around the world, year on year, we're seeing about a 40% increase.
What?
Each and every year in terms of cyber and digital crimes. We're now talking trillions of dollars, no longer billions of dollars or millions of dollars, but trillions. And they are staying one step ahead. You look at the deep fakes. You look at Leanne Manus from SABC.
The AI.
You look at Devi Sankri-Govender.
Yeah.
Even Elon Musk. They've used their images, their voices as a means to an end.
My image has also been used.
There you go.
My image has also been used.
They are so ahead in terms of using technology, and we're playing catch up. We really are. The state is playing catch up, and it's not just South Africa. It's a worldwide phenomenon. But the problem within the South African situation is that we've got the added complication of violent crime. So what do we want investigated? The rape and murder of somebody close to us?
Contact crimes.
Or the fact that somebody lost some money in a scam? Obviously, we want the resources focused on that contact crime. It means we should have more resources within the fraud sector, but we don't. You look at the UK, for example, last year, 150 million pounds added to their fraud fighting capacity. 400 more investigators employed just in London. So they are treating financial crime as economic terror. They're treating it as a massive threat.
And then maybe let's talk about more mechanisms that can be explored, Chad, even by government or the private sector to ensure that we do have this extra layer of security when it comes to procurement.
We have so many important regulatory authorities in South Africa. We talk about the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. We talk about SABC, which is the Banking Risk and Information Center. We talk about BASA, Banking Association South Africa. These organizations, even the Stokvel have an organization that represents them. Burial and funeral homes have it. They need to educate the public. We can't just leave it at government level. All of these regulatory authorities should be buying airtime on SABC and educating the public. They've got the money to do it. And they have a moral and ethical and regulatory obligation to keep the consumers and our countrymen advised of potential threats.
Absolutely. I hope those companies are listening. We're not very expensive when it comes to educational matters. Do buy airtime and educate your sectors as well as your suppliers. So, Sis Lerato, I mean, how can then, or where can consumers then find those legitimate government tenders?
Well, on the contrary, the very same.
The very
platforms.
same way, exactly.
And into bangifuna ukuyisho futhi ukuthi singathusa abantu, ne? There are opportunities that are legitimate. Khona kuma government departments websites. Idinga nje for you to just check and confirm. Yebo. So go to CSD. Mawufuna ukusupply mhlambe Department of Labor or know ukuthi how do they procure. Kunabo PECO, kunabo the IDT, ne? And Bongani Rainmakers, where they advertise public sector tenders as well.
So know your sector that you want to supply. Get as much information as you need so that uzokwazi ukuthi amatenda mefika anjani. And then what else can consumers do to ensure that they have some sort of protection, particularly before they actually spend that money, Chad? What can they do?
If you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be in business, find yourself a mentor, somebody that you can respect and look up to, that's not going to be condescending or patronizing and actually teach you and help you. Because if you don't have that basis, you are a target waiting to be targeted by these syndicates. And if you don't have common business sense, business acumen, and if you don't use your common sense, you will be targeted and you will become a victim.
And also, Chad, I suppose, I mean, if you are going that route whereby you're investing almost all your savings or your hard-earned money and putting it into a business, you need to go and do the necessary research and also hire the correct people that can actually do the work, the level of security that we're talking about here.
Correct. I call it homework. You have to do your homework. And if you're going to be in a specific space, make yourself the best in that space so that you can spot something that's fraudulent.
And Lerato, I mean, going forward, itender, let's say, a legitimate, does it start from ilokuzana email or government uzoqala advertise kwilokuzana or that department uzoqala advertise kwilokuzana kwi supplier chain yabo?
Yeah, so angithi amathandada issued because there's a need in the business.
Yes.
So tholakala maybe ukuthi vele mhlambe they need cleaners or the current contract is expiring. So ngomthetho mele ba publish the tender so that they're able to test and benchmark yabo. Then they will publish it on their website or on CSD. And another thing that people must understand ukuthi any procurable spend that is above 500,000 will be, according to the regulation, is that mele be advertised on CSD publicly. So that won't come through an RFQ kuma selected suppliers kuphela. So abantu abaningi mele bathole information, and some of us are teaching it, you know, on YouTube and all the social medias ukuthi understand the procurement process kwayona nje ukuthi sebenza kanjani, so that you know where and how to look for these opportunities properly. Another thing I wanted to mention to you is that kunabantu that are scammed, not because it was fake, but because of unreliable, maybe main contractors.
Okay.
Toluguti, maybe you are appointed in a project, you're a subcontractor as an electrician or electrical contractor or whatever, or you're a painter in a project. And then you paint and it's a legitimate work, you are there with people, but then just before you finish and get your last milestone, you are taken off-site, you're no longer having access to come in because of these unreliable main contractors as well. And then tomorrow you've spent so much money, you know, and now you can't even get, I don't know if you ever get those type of cases where now people come and complain and they end up not knowing where to go. Now, but at the end of the day, they're also scammed because they never got their money.
Yeah, but in that situation, what
and
do you do
the government
then?
doesn't even know, the client doesn't know, Guti, when as a main contractor, you've appointed so many people that were subcontracting under you and you're not even paying them and you're probably getting. That's another form of scam.
But how? Okay, I was going to ask ukuthi ubani ozowekela abantu basebenze on site without proper verification. Do they really make such mistakes?
Yeah, a lot. Construction is very heavy in the construction field, that actually. So you need to be very wise in how you contract, know who's the reporting line, understand where to go, who's the procurement people, who are the legal team, so you can be able to escalate ukuthi palanga pataling is I'm removed off site, kwenza kanjani manje kanjalo yabo.
Yo, this is very, very scary. And then, Chad, how do then scammers manipulate the legal or even the financial aspects of these fake tenders to make it look so legitimate?
So firstly, before I get to that, I want to say, if you're a business person, if you're an entrepreneur, find somebody like Lerato who understands that particular landscape and knows how to navigate that landscape. Don't try it yourself if you haven't had experience. When it comes to the legalities, we mentioned earlier mule accounts. It's very difficult to track and trace these people. You also have an obligation to the company that you represent. Even though you may own that company 100%, that company still has its own unique identity. It's called a heuristic entity. You're a natural person, your company is a heuristic person. And if you are using company money in a reckless manner, you can actually be held accountable because that company has its own identity.
True.
Section 22 of the Companies Act talks about reckless trading, where you haven't done your due diligence. And enhanced due diligence is so very important. And what Lerato mentioned about contractors who actually do receive these tenders and then subcontractors don't pay, that in itself is a fraud because the funds were not used for the intended purpose. It was used for a holiday to Mauritius, it was used for a flat in Cape Town, it was used for a Bentley, but it wasn't used to actually pay the people who did the work. So those people have recourse.
All right. Okay, you're going to tell us after the break, those people, how, what, and where is there available measures for recourse. Mugen, let's take our final ad break. We'll back shortly after this. Wind up. Mbukeli, it is our final segment. Sisaxoxa ngama-fake government tender scams esinixwayisayo ukuthi-ke nina, especially nina enregistrwe lapha kwi-CSD, you will know what we're talking about. Njengoba nijwayele ukuthi nithola ama-emails ekuthiwa supply nokuthi nokuthi, but catch is laba abafuna ukuthi udedele imali before bededela itender. All right, my guest today, Lerato Sebata, a procurement expert, Mr. Chad Thomas, IRS Forensic Investigators, 011-714-0671-0672. I'm almost out of time, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to accommodate our callers, but nisengazama ilaki and ukuthi nisithinte la studio. So we were talking about recourse, Chad, before we went to the ad break. You were saying specific people, though, not those ones that actually ran with their hard cash and went to meet this person and gave them bags of cash and said, here, I can't wait to be supplying boots to the army.
Sure. If you ask to supply cash, then you know that it's a corrupt deal. You shouldn't be getting involved.
Yeah.
But if you are being caught up in a scam by a syndicate, they're going to give you a bank account. Check with your bank, check with that bank, see if they're prepared to provide you information. Everybody screams poppy,
Are
poppy,
banks
poppy.
not able to flag these accounts though, Chad?
They can, but there are so many mule accounts out there. There are literally tens of thousands. You need to be tech savvy, you need to be business savvy, you need to apply common sense. If you are scammed, immediately contact your bank, because there's a certain amount of time that funds can sit in suspense.
True.
Perhaps they don't transfer it all out at once, and the bank can at least freeze that, and you can claw back some of that money. And make sure you report it to the authorities. I know a lot of people don't have faith in the states at this point in time from an investigation perspective, but they are increasing capacity. They're trying, and you never know. You could be the person that puts the final nail in the coffin of a syndicate, because you bring very valuable information to the attention of the state.
Absolutely. Sis Lerato, you spoke about the Public Procurement Act esignwe last year. Ntokazi, ibasiza kanjani abantu who might fall potential victims to this scam?
Ngicabanga ukuthi since there's an introduction of the Public Procurement Act, kuzoba nala ama-supplier bazokwazi ukuthi baye khona baye-complainer of irregular
like
procurement process, like an perfect. So it's more like an ombud of these tenderpreneurs, where they can go and complain either with the procurement process not followed properly, one alarm main contractors not conducting business well, and maybe those that are scammed. And I think ngalendlela government will see the number of issues related to tender scams and maybe can do something, but that will give them an indication of how many people actually come to us with this type of complaint. So the act is intended to be a mediator of some sort for my suppliers.
Like a consumer protection
like
act.
a CCMA nyana of tenderpreneurs, yes.
So bayithola kanjani the information, Sis Lerato, because as we understand, abantu bethu abathanda ukufunda bafundisise, and also ukuthi bafunde ukuthi ba-understand.
Mele bafollowe thina abantu ba some of us are able to do education. Yes. So I do educational videos on YouTube. Lerato Sebata, what are the things you need to know regarding procurement? I teach about these topics today on TikTok corner, everywhere people are at on social media. And now with Googleisha, find out. Don't just do Izindongazi, and sometimes call in the department ubuzu guti ikona yini le tender eso, and then how do I then yabo, and kunama consultants that are doing tender compilation. So nakona bayakwazi ukuthi banisize.
Okay. And then Chad, how can consumers protect their personal or business information when dealing with tenders?
We've got such strict legislation in South Africa. We've got POPI, which is for the personal information. We've got PAIR, which is the access to information. And we have the information regulator who's making herself heard.
Absolutely.
She's really trying to protect the rights of consumers. The banks have been called before Parliament to chat to Parliament about reckless lending, etc. So government is becoming very victim-centric, consumer-centric, and they're thinking about their citizenry. You need to understand that if you want to take anything further, you need an expert. If you want to understand the pitfalls of procurement and the benefits of procurement, you speak to somebody like Lerato.
Yes,
if you want to understand how to navigate the complex criminal justice system in South Africa, what your statutory reporting obligations are if you or your company have been defrauded, you contact a company like IRS or many other types of private investigators out there. Make sure that those private investigators are registered with CIRA though, because there's a lot of people out there that monetize other people's unhappiness, other people's problems. And you must be careful of them.
And that's exactly what I wanted to ask as a follow-up, Chad. Are there then any specific legal challenges or hurdles in investigating these fake tender scams?
So right now, as it stands, we have this issue of violent crime in South Africa, and we're expecting the state to concentrate on that. We need to eradicate GBV, femicide, and all these horrific acts that are taking place
where
in South Africa.
The resources are being diverted to, essentially.
Eventually, the state will be fully capacitated to also investigate non-violent crimes on a far bigger scale than they currently are. But in the interim, you can make use of the banks. They have an in-house forensic capacity. You can make use of private investigators, but make sure you're dealing with people that understand the South African criminal justice landscape.
And then let's talk about the most commonly frequently asked questions. Maybe fika kwena becela usizo Lerato abantu. Particularly, we're not saying ukuthi wonke umuntu okwazi ukuthi abe lapha ku-CSD. They are actually abantu ama businessmen afundele i-business. Some people really just want to have uyazi ukuthi kuye CIPC ukuregister company mhlambe ngizothola ithuba ngisebenze nabanye abantu. So yiziphi izinto ekumele bazazi? What are some of your frequently asked questions as well?
I think the most common questions that I usually get is how do I complete my tender documents? Okokuqala nje. Angiyazi lento lena, I've never done this thing, but I want to do it. Purely because there's so much unemployment rate and youth are encouraged to create businesses. They really are going out there to look for opportunities, but no one is educating them. Mina ngihlezi ngisho kuma class wami ngawenza ukuthi procurement, it's like you taken to a university and expected to pass your degree and no one enrolled you for it. Akekho umuntu ofundisa ukuthi how do you do this tender thing?
No.
How do I price? It's another question. How do I price? I don't know how to price. So, and then where do I get funding? I don't know where to get funding. Now that I actually have this order, how do I access? How do I draft business proposal? So yonke yabona yonke lento le iyahambiselana ngale ndlela ukuthi what do I do with this thing? Yabona ukuthi ni advertise ama tender but ngiqala kuphi? That's the most commonly asked question.
Okay, and in closing, Chad, that message that we're delivering to people to be extra vigilant, particularly when it comes to their personal information that they are putting in a space where they do not know who else has access to, what can they do?
Question everything. If you're prepared to start putting your personal information or your company information or your banking information on a document, you must feel comfortable enough that you've done sufficient due diligence. You've done your homework. If not, that information is going to be shared and you're going to become the target of multiple scammers because they sell lists of potential victims and they also sell lists of people that they know could fall for a scam.
So somebody said, in God we trust, everything else verify. Is that the route that we're supposed to be taking?
Absolutely. And whenever you're requested, upatali mali, before you get your order and whatever else, it's a red flag. If they ask you to do an immediate pay, it's a red flag. Don't do that.
All right, and unfortunately, that is where we're going to officially leave it. Thank you so much to my guests today for their great information. Abasnike yona namhlanje babukela Lerato Sebata. She's a procurement expert. Uyenza ama social media videos. Mulandeleni nizothola le information, particularly nina engazi ukuthi process yokusecure or procure itender isebenza kanjani. Mr. Chad Thomas is there. He's from IRS Forensic Investigators. Mangabeke wena usuyithola sebekskemile or udinga mhlambe we protect ningabafonela nibabuze, and just for basics ukuthi nizisebenzise ukuthi nikwazi ukuzivikela. Owakajali umntana unonhlanhla uAlicia uthi umthanda nonke emakhaya nisale kahle. Bye bye, be careful.